Due to the polarising opinions on this album, a suggestion was made to extend my usual short, concise and compact album reviews into something longer, which makes sense considering my thoughts of Macklemore and Ryan Lewis's latest release. And here it is.
The second studio album from American rapper Ben Haggerty, aka Macklemore, and producer Ryan Lewis follows up their 2012 debut breakout smash hit album, The Heist. And much like that album, this unruly mess I've made comes courtesy of what made their first outing so highly enjoyable. It contains the myriad of guest vocalists, this time around including Anderson.Paak, KRS-One, Ed Sheeran, Leon Bridges, Jamila Woods, and DJ Premier, just to name a few. Present is the highly enjoyable production courtesy of Ryan Lewis, which includes a mixture of bombastic, multi-instrumental tracks, but also dabbles in some down-tempo, simplistic instrumentation as well, and also present is Macklemore's goofy, slightly comedic and audible lyricism, along with the more serious, personal, reflective and introspective lyrics to boot. Having only been released no more than 2 weeks ago, this album has already received polarising opinions, some critics bashing it, others pleased with the results, and the rest either on the fence or mired in disappointment. Many viewpoints that I can sympathise with and understand. So where do I stand? Well, I like the album. In fact, I say that it's a good album. Better than The Heist? No. This album does have some issues. It doesn't quite have the same resonance, impact and lingering afterfeel that The Heist had, the instrumentation isn't better, and there are more terrible songs on this album that I'll talk about briefly in this review. Kicking off with the opening track, Light Tunnels, a song that frames Macklemore in his preparation and experiences during the 2014 Grammys, including references to the plasticity and disingenuousness of his fellow musical artists, the media's desire to hype up controversy to make a quick buck, his thoughts and feelings during, before and after processions, and of course his reference to winning the Best Rap Album award over fellow contender Kendrick Lamar. It's a strong opening that kicks off the album brilliantly, both musically and lyrically. Although some have raised the issue of Macklemore not outright bringing up Kendrick's name in the song, which I understand but don't necessarily find it to be a big issue because, come on, we all know about how Macklemore himself felt about the decision and don't necessarily think it needs bringing up again. Next is Downtown, which everyone should already know how I feel about this track. Then it's Brad Pitt's Cousin, an awful track about the time Mac was compared to Brad Pitt, along with references to his cat being highly followed on Instagram, drugs, drinking and eating fast food. Along with a wasted inclusion from Experience, which could have been done by anybody else, it's a poor song. Not the worst, however. No, that would be track 9, Dance Off, with appearances from Idris Elba, for some reason, who does his forgettable piece, much like his stint on John Newman's album last year, and Anderson.Paak, whose presence here is a non-entity, doing 4 lines towards the end of the track before pissing off. It amazes me how someone who released one of this year's best albums was cubbyholed into this waste of a space song, complete with messy synthesizers that provides no desire for me to want to get up to this track. It's hands down the worst song on the album. This is a case of goofiness falling extremely flat. Where does the goofiness work? On tracks like Let's Eat, which is about Mac's desire to eat healthier and partake in a nutritious lifestyle, but cannot help himself in scoffing down processed junk. Complete with a jaunty piano, cash register effects and sounds that resemble outside noises including traffic, bustling people and footsteps, it's an infectious track that has charm and fun lathered over it. Some of the more personal tracks about Macklemore's experiences growing up are also decent and presented well. Buckshot, relating to Macklemore's childhood hobby of graffitiing, is alright, but the constant buzzing synth line becomes incredibly annoying very quickly, and KRS-One's guest appearance outshines Mac in spades. Much like the follow-up track, Growing Up, dedicated to his daughter and his desire to raise her to the best of his ability, even though he admits that sometimes he may not always get it right, he'll try his hardest. A sweet sentiment, but then Ed Sheeran pops up for the chorus and smashes Mac in terms of emotional delivery, passion and rawness, which really should not be happening. Out of all the personal tracks, Kevin is the strongest, if not the best song on the album. Thematically, it involves Mac's deceased brother Kevin, who passed away due to his addiction to prescription drugs, and Mac condemns the American nature of the medical system that pumps out drugs willy-nilly to whomever. Along with a great chorus from Leon Bridges, the instrumentation is rather upbeat for such a damning and sad song, but I feel that the message is all the stronger for it. The theme on drugs continues in the song Need to Know, which is focused on Mac's own addiction, Kevin and his relapse a few years back. But after Kevin, it doesn't stick out as much. The chorus-less Saint Ides is also one of the standout tracks, which focuses on the start of Macklemore's addiction to alcohol and his progression in giving up the drink, and cites his family as one of his motivations to keep clean. Another meaningful song that is complemented with great production as well. Bolo Tie is pretty forgettable and there's nothing that's memorable in the slightest, and The Train, whilst it may not be the most sentimental or meaningful track on the album, it holds up terrifically with a solemn instrumental, Carla Morrison's simple yet gorgeous delivery in the chorus, and the theme of leaving everything behind you to continue with your life and your work, offset with past grievances and regrets, rings hollow yet beautiful. And finally, White Privilege 2, a song that tackles one of the more pressing issues that this album deals with: racism in America, the Black Lives Matter movement, and Macklemore putting himself under the microscope when it comes to his own stance and position on the matter. Complete with a fantastic hook, interspliced voiceovers from a variation of individuals talking about the movement, violence from police towards those of an ethnic minority, striving to squash the inequality, and an inner monologue Macklemore has about his involvement and supporting equality between people of different races. There have been many criticisms over Macklemore's position, many branding him as jumping on a bandwagon or being racked with so-called white guilt that he's only putting himself on the front line to look good, criticising his work as appropriating what is seen as black culture, and his seemingly simple solution to have a dialogue and read an article in order to make some progress, and the song in and of itself being preachy as hell. While some of these criticisms may be valid, I can't help but feel that some of the criticism is misguided. Is the dialogue and article line simple? Yes. However, I feel that the song itself is trying to invite the listener to put themselves in Mac's position. He's persuading the listener to not remain ignorant of the situation, and whilst they may feel like they know the struggle, in reality, some people don't know as much as they should. Reading an article or having a dialogue isn't going to be the ultimate solution, but it's a start. It's an icebreaker that gives the listener a push to educate themselves. And the underlying message of being an advocate of something, like a movement in this case, but remaining silent and not willing to put yourself out there, not willing to stand up for what is right and make your voice heard, instead just choosing to remain silent, isn't progression, and in fact it works in favour of injustice, and by sitting on our backsides not doing anything, nothing is going to change. And to an extent, most of us are guilty of this, myself included. And this isn't about feeling guilty for what has happened in the past and the injustice that people of an ethnic origin have suffered. Nothing is going to change that, but it doesn't mean that the injustice that those of an ethnic origin experience today has to continue. And what Macklemore does here is plant a seed in your head that makes you question your own involvement and asks you what you are going to do to help. And for me, it's not done in a way that Macklemore tries to paint himself as a martyr. We have our faults, and uncertainty and lack of confidence and knowledge does hinder all of us. Also, by highlighting his own doubts about his involvement and where he stands in the mix, makes the message all the more relatable, highlighting him to be human in his doubt and uncertainty. And the line, "I want to take a stance because we are not free, and then I thought about it, we are not we," impacts the listener even more, showing that even when standing together as one and showing unity, there's still that era that despite him aligning himself with the movement, the divide is still there, it's still present, but he's striving towards ending this divide along with anyone else who shares the same convictions as he does. That ultimately, this is something that he truly believes in, and the fact that he has the courage in his conviction and in his beliefs to march and protest alongside those of an ethnic origin and those of a Caucasian origin, despite the criticisms levied his way, he will continue to do so, whether people like it or not. Well, that was a bit deep, but yeah, overall I do like this album. It definitely has its flaws, the production isn't as lively, as bouncy or danceable as that on The Heist, and the goofier moments can be rather unbearable and oddly placed alongside the serious introspective moments, but that's Macklemore and Ryan Lewis for you. What were you expecting? You either love them or you hate them. Overall, I score this album a 76 out of 100.